Well, we're having a bit of a snow day today on this February 28th, 2023, last day of February. It's beautiful. It's a little bit of an inconvenience since the power's out and it's supposed to be working. I'm going to duck under the fence. There we go. So these trees will pop back up after the snow melts off of them. It's really kind of pretty. Very winter wonderland-ish. There's the creek behind the house. I think I mentioned the power's out, so I'm going to have a little bit of a break from work until the power comes back on, because I'm not driving down to the metropolis in this. So that's all for updates for now. Hi everyone, welcome to my podcast, The Knitting Equestrian Nomad. My name is Corrinala and I live in the Pacific Northwest, the very northern part, with my partner Randy, our two kitties, Herbert and Harley, and my two horses, Odin and Bragi, the Mustangs, that I adopted from the Bureau of Land Management Wild Horse Adoption Program, and I will provide a link in the show notes for you if you're interested in that. Today is a rainy and cold Saturday, March 4th. I guess this is an improvement in weather. It's probably easy to understand. I'm a little bit tired of winter and just really anxious to, start gardening with earnest, but every time I keep thinking that I'm just going to even plant the cold weather plants outside, like peas and lettuce and stuff like that, we get snow. So I feel like I've been set back a little bit, but oh well. Anyway, normally what I talk about in my podcast are about my knitting projects, about my horsemanship journey with my two Mustangs, and then gardening, cooking. I refer to my gardening as junkyard gardening because I literally will take any broken container that will hold soil and drain water and plant things in it. So I have a little video of my garden in the last episode, so if you are interested in what it looks like, even in winter, it looks worse, I guess. But yeah, I have broken feed pans, livestock feed pans, that, again, they hold soil and drain water, so I can put plants in them. So first, I'll talk about the knitting. You can see I am wearing a cowl. This is a cowl of my own design using 10 minis. It is a broken rib, odd number of stitches, and then a lace pattern that's a 13. It's divisible by 13 is how the lace pattern works. So each little section of the lace pattern is 13 stitches. So yeah, here it is. This was a bit of a mishmash of minis that I had. Some of it came in a kit. I want to say this color here, this color, this color, this color, and this color all came as like a packed together in by Freckled Whimsy. These more solid colors, the purple, the turquoise, and then this kind of lighter color, they were in a sale bin. They were 20 25 gram minis. So I have quite a bit of leftover for each of these, and each of these rows is 16 stitches long. So the first few rows are stockinette, and then the lace pattern, which is, so 16. This part, the top part, is also like 4, I want to say, for some reason I'm thinking there's 8 in this lace pattern. So it's the lace pattern and then a knit round in the lace pattern is how it works. So if you're interested in the pattern, I can certainly jot down some notes for you and put them and just send them to you. I haven't written a pattern for it. I mean, I kind of thought about doing that, but I'm aware that it's a lot of work. And so anyway, here it is again. I love cowls. I typically wear shorter ones, but you know, this one is, yeah, it's just going to be nice and warm. My second finished object. Now, how unusual is it for me to have 2 finished objects in one sitting? Especially since I think I had finished objects last time. These are just a pair of socks. These are DK, these are the Crazy Sock Ladies DK vanilla sock pattern with a barn toe. So I have long toes, and so I use the barn toe that is in the Kate Atherly custom sock knit book. And it ends up having a much longer toe than kind of the standard umbrella toe and other toes. It has a much more gradual decrease, which I like. It gives me room for my toes. So, and then the heel flap and gusset. So yeah, these are comfy, cozy socks. Did 2x2 rib. I can't remember what the cast on is, but it's in Crazy Sock Ladies pattern with the, and I did a 2x2 rib for probably 15 rows, it looks like to me. And then the leg, you can do the leg as long as you want. I didn't have that much yarn. This yarn is left over from Muscana yarn that I used to knit a pair of mittens, the world's easiest mittens by Tin Can Knits. So I have just a tiny bit of yarn left over, so I probably could have started on the toe a little bit, but you know, I don't like playing yarn chicken. So yeah, this is the first pair of DK socks I have knit. I haven't blocked them. I typically don't block my socks. I just wear them and then throw them in the washing machine. So I don't throw them in the dryer, but I do throw them in the washing machine and just wash them with my other clothes. So it's, I actually kind of like the fabric that comes out of the washing machine. So anyway, so, and they tend to get a little bit better shape with wear and washing too. So yeah, my 2 finished objects, DK weight socks and a cowl. So what's on my needles, you might ask? I have 4 projects going. One you have seen before. This is the Berroco Crossvine cable sweater out of I think it's an Aran weight. It's at least a chunky Aran weight yarn, so it's a cable. This is the back. It's knit in pieces from the bottom up. Yeah, and there's even cable on the, it's not called the cuff. What do you call it on a sweater? This part down here that goes around your waist or your hips. So this will have to be blocked just because the cable kind of pulls everything together. This is the ribbing. I think this was a free pattern. I love free patterns. So again, Berroco Crossvine. I'm trying to, there we go. am knitting the 3rd size. So I did a gauge swatch. Here's my saga with gauge swatches. For some reason I always do it wrong. I don't know whether I can't count or what my problem is, but I felt like my gauge was too tight based on the gauge swatch. So I did another gauge swatch using a bigger needle. I didn't like the fabric. So I decided to use the original needle size and knit a bigger size. Well, I had knit quite a bit, and it was just obviously going to be enormous. I mean, this does have positive ease, which is great. I like kind of loose, baggy sweaters, but you know, I don't like them to get in my way. I don't want it to be a cape or a, you know, a choir gown or something like that. So I ripped it all out and started over and just went back to the original size. And I feel very confident that this is going to fit just right, just the way I want it to fit. So I have done the armhole shaping and am just doing this section that goes from your armhole up to your shoulder. So I think it calls for like 8 inches, so it looks like I have about 2. So I've got 6 more inches of just knitting straight in pattern, no decreases or anything, and then I'll do the shoulder piece and then start on the front. So the yarn is let's see if I can find a label, because I think if I remember right, I couldn't find the exact yarn, but it's like an alpaca chunky or something. Oh, here it is. So I could put on my glasses so I can actually read it. Ultra Alpaca Chunky. And the color is 72194. So kind of this almost a deep emerald green is what I would call it. Kind of a bluey green. It's 50% superfine alpaca and 50% Peruvian wool. So it feels really nice. It's soft. It doesn't seem to have much of an itch factor. So and I appreciate that. I am a little bit sensitive, but usually I can solve that, but by, you know, just putting on something underneath it. So that's whip number 1, making very good progress on that. This is has been my morning knitting project. Before, you know, get up at 4 a.m., make myself a cup of tea, and knit for an hour or so before work. What else? Oh, you have seen this before too. This is the Setesdal hat. This is the second hat I made. I think maybe last time the first one I made was in my finished objects. So this one's for Randy. The colors are a little bit different. I used pretty much the called for colors in the first hat, although I didn't have the pink, so I used a light gray instead of the pink. So for Randy, I just decided to use different colors. So the blue, gold, light gray, and green, and then a brown. So this is where the pink would go, and I'm using brown. So this hat should go fairly quickly. I admit I've been kind of ignoring it. So I have this colorwork section that I'm working on, one more completely different color section that includes more of the gold and blue, and then the top, the crown piece of the hat, which is, well, it's actually a colorwork that is going to be a light gray and blue. So yeah, it ought to work out pretty nicely. I had to use bigger needles because Randy's head is bigger than mine. I have a small head, so it's not like he has a big head. I just have a very small head. So I use bigger needles because I tend to knit a little bit tight with color work. So hopefully it'll fit him. What else do I have? I have 2 new cast-ons. One, and this is for a make-along that the Knit All the Yarn podcast is hosting. It's a Stephen West knit along. I am doing Exploration Station. So this is where I'm at. I think this might be one wedge number. So it starts here, wedge 1, wedge 2. Oh, this is wedge 3. So yeah, I like these colors. This is the right side. Maybe I'll show you that side. I did have to rip it out once because in the gold section I didn't read the instructions right, and Stephen West has an interesting way of doing short rows, and I just misread it. I don't know why I misread it. Because there's short rows in this section too, this previous section that I did just fine. So I don't know. Well, I'll tell you what, and I'll tell you more when I get to the live stuff. But anyway, this knit along started on March 1st, and there's Knit All the Yarn podcast has a Ravelry page. I admit I don't participate too much on that. I just so I guess some people probably do knit alongs for the sense of community. I can't really say that I do that. I just like I don't know, it just gives me inspiration or motivation to knit a pattern I have not knit before. This is my first Stephen West pattern. Here it is, Exploration Station. So one of the things that attracted me to this pattern was that it has brioche in it. I have tried brioche a couple times and haven't done it well. His pattern includes a video on how to do it. It looks really straightforward. He knits continental style, and I do too, so I think that is going to be fairly straightforward. I think the other instructions that I have looked at have done it English style, and there's just more motions that need to be done, and I found that a little bit confusing. So, pardon me, it looks like I have a little bit of halo of hair. That's probably because of the humidity. So I look forward to keeping you updated on that project. I'm doing a gift knit, so I won't mention that in case the recipient happens to watch this. So in other words, the gift knit's for Christmas, so it'll be a while. And who knows whether I'll actually remember to take a photograph before I send it off in December, because December is a long ways away, thank goodness. The fourth work in progress I have are the Hermione socks by Erica Loader, I think. I can't remember if this is a paid for pattern or not. I suspect it was. Let me go back to the exploration. Goodness gracious. Exploration Station, because I forgot to tell you what the yarn is that I'm using. It's a fingering weight yarn. It's a Knit Picks yarn, and it is gloss, which is a fingering weight. So for instance, this color here is called Velveteen. I don't know that I'm going to need all the extra skeins. I bought 2 skeins of each. The pattern calls for just a little bit more than each skein has, and I just totally bought into the Stephen West idea of, make sure you have enough. Buy an extra skein. So I did. So this is color D, and this is called Robot. So lovely gray. Velveteen is color B. And then no, is that right? Yeah. Color C is Harvest. Yeah, gloss is Knit Picks fingering weight, and then this is color A. This lovely plume is what it's called. So yeah, it's a nice yarn. It is 70% merino wool and 30% silk. So you could probably knit socks with it if you wanted to. I'm knitting on Chalgu red lace needles, and whatever the size, I want to say it's probably a size 6. I was going to say 4, which would be incorrect. The Setesdal hat is on a size 4 needle, and I think I'm knitting those on wooden needles. Usually probably clover. When I'm knitting on wooden needles, circular, they're usually clover. Although Chagu has bamboo needles also, and I did buy a pair in the outing I was on in the last month. Excuse me, I have a little bit of frog in my throat. I'm drinking a red rubio tea, herb tea. Back to Hermione's Everyday Socks by Erica Luter. So I got started on these, and then I did the standard 64 stitches, but 64 stitches is too big for me. So I ripped it all out, started over. It has a 1x1 rimming, and then there's a pattern. The needles I'm using are Addie's Flexi Flips, and they're size US 1, 2.5 millimeter. I like these because you don't have to do magic loop if you don't like. You don't have to do DPNs if you don't like. It's just 3 needles, and they are flexible in the middle, so I find them easier on my hands. I like metal needles, so I've knit a lot of socks with these. So I am casting on 60 stitches instead of 64. Hopefully that will fit. The yarn I'm using is a hand-dyed yarn I bought at a shop on Whidbey Island last summer. I don't know that I have the label anymore because I had knit these into a pair of socks that were too big and I ripped them out. So here is the contrast color. It's fingering weight. I don't remember what the content is, but this will be heels and toes. So, and I will probably knit these a little bit short, maybe kind of below calf, above, between ankle and calf, because that's where I like my socks to be. So yeah, these are my 4 whips that I've been working on. Super excited about that. So, horsemanship. I don't have a lot to say about horsemanship because we have had snow since President's Day, which I think the last time a podcast was there at the end of February during that President's Day weekend. We had snow. We had a power outage on the Tuesday after President's Day, so instead of working from home, since I didn't have internet, I went to the office, which is an hour and a half south of here in the metropolis, the greater Puget Sound metropolis of Seattle, Bellevue, Redmond, and so on and so forth. We didn't have snow then. I don't remember what caused the power outage. Maybe wind. We do get a lot of wind. The power was off only for a few hours, so, but it was good to go to the office. It was only the second time I'd been to the office since I started at my new job. All that to say, there was no real horsemanship that day. And then we got snow, and we got quite a bit of snow. Power stayed on, but it's just kind of hard to do very much when it snows. Another thing, oh, I know what I can tell you. Another thing that happened is that I was going to do some just really quick trailer training with my horses. I keep my truck and trailer hooked up where the horses are. I put the electric fence between the truck and the trailer so the horses don't start gnawing on the mirrors or, doing something obnoxious. They can't really harm the trailer. So, that's in their space, and then I don't have to do too much moving things around when I, just want to work with them for, 10 or 15 minutes. So, I got the trailer all set up and open and invited Odin to come in. And he's been loading at Liberty, and meaning I don't have to have a halter or lead rope to just pull him in or anything, or even, encourage him to come in. Well, he put 2 steps in and then was going to head to the back, but then he just all of a sudden just backed out like his nose was on fire. And I'm standing in the trailer, so I don't know what's going on. Is there a boogeyman behind me? I mean, it's not a big trailer, so it's, I couldn't figure out what the deal was. So I invited him in again. He did the exact same thing. He put his 2 front feet in, went to, put his hind feet in, and backed out like his nose was on fire. I'm like, oh gosh, what is going on? So I got out, I got down on my hands and knees, looked under the trailer. Is there a monster under the trailer? I went and made sure it was connected. I kind of looked out the side windows to see if there was anything that could have been threatening. No, couldn't see anything. So I asked him one more time. And because he's a good boy, he tried one more time and the same thing. And it's like, okay. And, by then he's kind of probably mad at me because I'm obviously not listening to him. But I don't know what he's saying. So I asked Bragi to come in. And Bragi has been really good about coming in, putting 2 feet in and just hanging out. Bragi did the exact same thing. He put 2 feet in, leaned in towards where I was in the trailer, and just backed out like his nose was on fire. And I go, okay, this is really weird that both of them are having this issue. So I got out, I closed the door just so they wouldn't get in and scare themselves. And I went back up to the front of the trailer, and that's when I noticed that the electric fence had blown into the trailer. So I put the electric fence back on the side that it's supposed to be on, touching a plastic bucket so it's not transmitting, conducting electricity. And I said, okay. By then, Odin doesn't trust me, so I'm not even going to ask him. But I asked Bragi. I said, hey, Bragi, what do you think? Can you try this again? And he did, and he was able to stand in there. So it's like, okay, that problem was fixed. Now what this illustrates are several things. One is that how incredibly sensitive horses are. And not just horses, a lot of animals are. And their perception is way beyond what we humans can sense. I think my sensory skills have increased dramatically since I've had my horses at home. But they're just not on par with horses, particularly Mustangs who were out on the range at some point in their life. Odin was out on the range for 6 years before he was gathered and came to me. Gathered and he was trained for 100 days, and then he came to me. So I've had him for 5 years. He's 11 this year. Bragi was on the range much less time. He was gathered as a yearling maybe, and I got him when he might have been 2, and he didn't have near the training that Odin did. And I don't think he has the same kind of wild horse skills that Odin does, but he's learning. I mean, what's interesting is that they know when there's other animals nearby. I don't know how they know, what they can hear, or how they sense things. But they know. Like, for instance, last night I was feeding, and Bragi would not come into the stall to eat, which is unusual for him. He loves his food. But he kept staring off out in the pasture. And I just stood there and watched him. Odin, he was in his stall chowing. He was like, hey, Bragi's got the watch duty. I'm going to eat. Well, what happened is I waited for a few minutes, and pretty soon I see two deer coming alongside the pasture. They would have been completely out of his view because they were on the other side of the barn, and then they were headed into his view. And it was just really fascinating that he knew they were there. So sensory perception of animals. If you have pets, I encourage you to really pay attention to what they can observe. I think it's a very interesting mindfulness, paying attention, being present exercise, maybe even meditative if you want to think about it that way. Anyway, back to my trailer training story. So Bragi did come in, and he stood there like a good boy and waited for me to tell him that it was okay to leave. I asked Odin to come in again. I think I went and got the halter, because at this point he didn't trust me. I didn't get the halter to pull him in or punish him or anything like that. I just wanted to offer him some clarity. It's like, it's okay now. Bragi tested this, and it's okay. So got to the point where Odin would get in with his front feet, and he would wait until I gave him the signal to back out. That, to me, was a huge step in trust and rebuilding our relationship. So I just let him go. I told him he was a good boy for that, and I just let him go. And then I did it again a couple days later. Invited him in to put his front feet in and stay until I told him it was okay to get out. I invited him in again to see if he would go all the way to where he normally stands at the I guess the front of the trailer, and he wouldn't do it. So my plan was that I was going to let him do that, just get in the part way 3 times, because he gave me 3 times effort before I figured out what was wrong. So that was my plan. Unfortunately, we got the snow, and it's just, the footing isn't just, things are slippery. The footing isn't good, and I didn't want to shatter his confidence by having him slip when I'm asking him to do something that's, he obviously has his mindset against. So the snow finally, really, the snow only left like a day or 2 ago. But then I got sick. I haven't been sick in so long because, pre-pandemic, because of all the protocols that have been in place, and, I'm just being really careful about, large gatherings, and, I'm just even less inclined to go into crowds. If I've been on an airplane, I've worn a mask, stuff like that, and I felt very well protected. But last week, Randy was sick, and he just had the sniffles. He tested for COVID, wasn't COVID. He was totally fine, able to go to work and stuff like that. So, and we kind of maintained our spacing, and I didn't get anything until Tuesday afternoon. And then all of a sudden I have these like flu-like symptoms, the body aches. I didn't have a fever, but, I was just cold. It was, our house was plenty warm, but I was just cold. So, yeah. The next morning I got up and I had a roaring headache. It was just awful. It was just painful headache. And I work from home, so it's a lot easier to be under the weather and still work. And I think I took a nap at lunchtime, and but I still felt pretty rotten. And that was Wednesday. I think that's right. I think that's the sequence of things. That was Wednesday. Thursday morning, not much better. By Thursday afternoon, I was talking to one of my colleagues, and she said, why don't you just take the rest of the day off? Because basically I've been subsisting on saltine crackers and Theraflu. I mean, and it was just these horrible body aches and just not being able to be warm. Tested for COVID, didn't have that, so thank goodness. And then Friday morning, I woke up with this rotten headache. I will say by Thursday afternoon, I was feeling a little bit better. Like when I went out, I'd go stagger out to feed the horses. And Thursday afternoon, I was starting to see the spark of life in me. Like I had a little bit more enthusiasm. Friday morning, I woke up with a horrible headache. And I was like, oh, great. When is this going to move on? But by noon on Friday, I'm like, woohoo! I just, it's like I'm free from this tyranny of sickness. And I just feel great. It's the weirdest thing. It was like Tuesday afternoon to Friday morning. Full 48 hours. So maybe 60 hours total, which really isn't too bad. All that to say, I didn't get to go back to the horse trailer thing. And right now, my truck had to go in for service on Friday, just routine stuff. Randy did that for me because he's a good guy. But I don't have the trailer hooked up, the truck hooked up to the trailer, so I can't practice trailer loading. And today the weather was just like raining and sleeting sideways, so I was like, okay, the boys are going to continue to be on vacation. So, that's been that. Gardening. Like I said, I started some seeds outside in these like little, the little clamshell produce containers, like you get strawberries in and stuff like that. Planted some seeds outside in those, and then it snowed. So I've been planting some more things in my indoor garden under lights, and I actually moved that from our dining room to downstairs in our utility area and set up a heater and set up the lights and stuff like that. So hopefully I'll include a picture of that at the end of this episode. And I can't believe I've been talking for 36 minutes. Honestly, I didn't think I had much to say today, but I'd kind of forgotten about everything that happened with Odin and the horse trailer and learning about the electric fence and their sensitivity. So, thanks for watching, and I forgot to thank you in the beginning that if you're a returning viewer, I really appreciate your coming back. If you're new, welcome. I hope you enjoy stories about horses, and you are able to knit along while I say my piece. That is all for now. You can find ways to contact me in the description box, as well as the podcasts that inspire me. So take care.